Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you're here today. You are in for such a treat as we have Monica Wilbanks from the Wilbanks with us today. Before you go anywhere, make sure you subscribe to this channel. We've got so many cool things coming, as well as give this video a like and leave a comment of who else you would like to see on the channel. Thank you so much for watching. Now let's get on to the good stuff. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am so honored today to have Monica Wilbanks of the Wilbanks with us today. Thank you so much for doing this.
Well,
I'm so
happy
excited.
to do it.
I'm so excited. We're gonna hop right in. So for anybody who is not familiar with the Wilbanks, your ministry and what y'all do, tell them a little bit about it.
The Wilbanks go way back before my time, actually. My parents have been involved in music ministry since before I was born, and over 40 years.
Wow.
Involved in music ministry in the local church in Michigan, where I was born, back in the 70s. And my father attended Bible college and for music and all of that, and then they're out in California, then returned home to Michigan. The plan was all laid out. The pastor asked him to do that and to come back and be their music director. So he was involved with the worship ministry and the choirs and everything. And they formed a group. There was various members. And then in 1991, as a family, my parents, myself and my brother, who's younger than I am, went on the road full time. My parents felt the call to do that for a few years leading up, the Lord kind of pulling on them.
Right.
But not sure, it was all uncharted territory at that point. And is this something that, is this really God,
Right.
So it took a little while to decide, yes, this was the Lord leading them and what they needed to do. It can be very scary. It's exciting, but it's definitely, it's definitely a risk.
Right.
And so, leaving home with 2 kids and all of that and traveling full time. And I remember somewhere in the process, the Lord dealing with them, we'd taken just a little road trip, and my dad saying, would you kids like to do this all the time? Well, my personality, I'm sitting on go. When are we going?
You're
where
like,
are we
yes,
going
let's
next?
do it.
And so I was like, yeah,
Right.
And of course, obviously, I didn't understand at that point. It's not a vacation all the time.
Right. You're like, hey, this is a great road trip.
But I liked traveling.
Right.
A lot. So 1991, we started traveling as the Wilbanks. It was at that point predominantly just my parents singing, and I was still learning how to hear harmony, things like that. Otherwise, they would have to teach it to me. Okay, this is your part.
Right.
And so they'd start working me in here and there on a song, feature me, and we did a recording that year, and that was the first recording I sang on. I was 14.
Wow.
And it grew from there, and the Wilbanks have been traveling full-time, part-time, but in some capacity ever since. So
right.
How long ago was that? 1991.
Wow.
So we're almost 30 years ago.
Wow. And that's incredible. I was just telling you, it's such an honor to be having this conversation, because I grew up on y'all's music, like Fresh Anointing, everything, like all the songs, you can name them, we heard them, we lived them. Oh, just incredible music. So thank y'all for what you do, for the industry. So yeah, thank you. It's like a huge honor. So you mentioned this a little bit, but it's your family's ministry, your parents. At what point did you realize, okay, this is Monica's ministry, right? It like that moment where it transitioned into something that you did, right? And it became personal to you. At what moment did that happen?
There have been a few things in my life, especially since my husband and I have been married, where there's that moment, God spoke. But a lot of times for me with the calling or whatever, when I was in Bible college and I would hear people get up and teach and speak about, I was at this spot at the altar when the Lord clearly spoke and said this and this, and about my calling and the timing and all that. And my husband, he has that sort of experience, but I can't say that there was an aha moment. As a kid, watching my parents, I think as any kid does, you have these, whether it's the specific thing they do or not, they're superheroes, so you idolize them.
You look up to them, exactly.
And so you mimic them, whatever, and I'd mimic all my favorite singers, in the bathroom mirror with a hairbrush, whatever. And so there was that, desire. But as I started getting a little bit older, then it was, an understanding, okay, I've got to choose a career path. I've got to choose it when I go to college. What am I going to go to college for? And what's the Lord calling me to as a ministry? Even before I was 14 and we were traveling.
Right.
My parents never pushed me to do. There was never, you're going to take lessons and you're going to sing and you're going to do this. They just let me decide. And there are times you hear of where families, whatever their field is, if they're doctors, if they're in the legal field or whatever, where there's that pressure from the parent or from the child puts on themselves, thinking I'll disappoint them if I don't continue in this. And we never had that. It was just something I wanted to do. So for me, it was like I felt, but maybe every young girl feels this way at some point. I was born to do this, I don't know.
Right.
And it was having to find out, is this God or is this just something I want to do because it's what my parents do? It was more having to, maybe trying to talk myself out of it at times. Like, I don't want to do this just because I think it's what I'm supposed to do. And God, is this really you? Because you see people pursuing something and you can tell, and I don't know that I could have articulated this at that age, but this is not the right fit.
Right.
There's a pressure to do this and this isn't working.
Right.
And I didn't want to be that girl.
Yeah, that's good.
Trying too hard to do something
that.
So it was more, like I said, not that I seriously tried to talk myself out of it, but this is what I want to do. And if you're praying and seeking God's will and you ask Him to order your steps, well, He does, and He gives us desires. And God, the Bible says He gives us the desires of our heart. Well, if you're praying and asking for His will, then I believe He'll give you desires that He wants you to have.
Yeah.
So it was just all along the way, each step saying, okay, God, is this you or is this just me? I don't want to force something to happen.
Right.
That was a really long answer.
No, that was incredible. That was so
there
good.
was no one moment. It was just here and
Over
there,
time,
just kind of, and then like I said, being 14 when I started traveling, some of my friends that I would meet out on the road, at that time we have a bigger family, I guess you would say, we call it our road family, within the gospel music industry. At that time, just starting out, I would say most of our connections was just with evangelists who had a pulpit ministry, and his family traveled with them, but they weren't necessarily all up in front involved in the ministry.
They just kind of came
and
along. So
for me, though, being 14 and thrust into, I teased my parents and tell them I was child labor because I was 14 years old. And so, singing, and gradually it was increasing the amount I was involved. But I wasn't just sitting out on the pew watching my dad or my parents be active in this ministry.
You were
I was an active part too. So I had to take ownership, and I've always been, and this is not, if you're watching, this isn't always a good thing. Sometimes it's a detriment, but I've always been a perfectionist. So if I'm going to do this, I want to do it right. I wanted to be taken seriously as a 14-year-old. I didn't want to be patronized as this young girl that was just tagging along with her parents. So I accepted the responsibility for it. I wanted to do it and be effective, whatever I was going to do. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I love how you touched on, like, it wasn't a moment, it was over time. And I think there's so much of a stigma kind of we all wait for that moment where it's like God's like, okay, this is what you're supposed to do. Sure. And a lot of times it's what we walk through, what we live through, kind of the mentors He's put in place, like you said, what our parents do. All of that leads us to kind of what we are meant to do and the people He's placed in our lives. So I love that answer. It's incredible.
Yeah, we have, I'm sure you've heard this said before, but a lot of people are always looking for a word from God. And sometimes there is that, not necessarily audible voice, but for certain God spoke to you. There's times, there's what is called a rhema word, where you've got this, you feel the Lord dealing with you about a particular thing, and you've heard of people. I opened up my Bible, and the scripture that the Lord dropped in my spirit that morning, there it was. Or I got to church, and the thought that had just been going through my mind, that's what the man of God spoke about. That there are those times, but where I want a fresh word. Well, we have 66 books, and they're applicable every single day. And so sometimes we've got to go dig and search
That's so
and,
good.
and look for something.
Right.
So it's there. He's always I just heard somebody say the other night, we were having a devotion with some family, and somebody said, I don't believe God ever stops speaking. We just sometimes aren't listening. So there's always something. We just have to be listening for it.
Yeah, that's incredible. So good. All right, so I know songwriting is a huge passion of yours, and an incredible one at that. So songwriting, like, the last question, maybe there wasn't an aha moment, but was that also something that was kind of grown along the way, kind of along your journey, that you realized, hey, this is something I want to do?
It was, as a teenager, probably even before we were full-time in a touring ministry. I can remember riding down the road, daydreaming, looking out the window, and occasionally having this idea for maybe that could be a song. But I think I was an old soul, and so I would think, I'd hear people say, great songs are born out of experience, and a lot of times it's tragedy and trials. And I think I'm just a kid. I knew, like, I have a good life. I haven't really had any major sorrows to write about. And not that, now looking back, it doesn't matter what your age is, you have concerns and fears and all that kind of stuff. But I thought it was, I think I do remember a moment thinking, okay, I want to write songs. And it was more than just, and I hope I can do that someday. I think I really felt like that's one of the things I'm supposed to do, but it's not time right now. And I don't think anybody would take it seriously because I'm young. And I don't know, I didn't attempt it, and that could have been a mistake on my part. But I also understood I haven't had a lot of major life experience, and it's something I plan to do one day if that's what the Lord wants, but it's not for right now. So I would kind of, piddle around with it, ideas and concepts. But also looking back, I think I didn't realize it then, but I was drawn to, whether it was a gospel song or a funny country song with a great hook line, I was always drawn. I'm musical. I like music in general, whether it's a great melody or a great lyric, but I was always drawn to songs with catchy lyrics that really grab. Oh, you didn't see that coming. That's cool. That's great. I was always drawn to that. And if a song, whatever it was, even if it felt good, if it didn't say anything to me, it was like I wasn't really interested. I wanted songs that had content, that said something. So in the back of my mind, and now as a writer, I understand different genres have different ways of conveying a message, and there's certain vernacular. Is that an old person word?
No. I totally
there's certain vernacular that flies more in one genre than another, and it was like subconsciously I could pick that up, but I didn't really fully understand that then. But I would learn, this genre kind of is going to say this way, where over here they wouldn't be quite so flowery or whatever. They're going to be more to the point. And so it was like, connecting the dots, putting all that together, and kind of learning a little bit of that along the way as far as the actual lyric and all that. But it was, yes, a process, but initially feeling like this is what I'm supposed to do, not now. And then fast forward, I was in Bible college and taking music composition, and it was like, I believe I took that class in my junior year. That's when, as far as my course structure, that's when you would take that. So it's towards the end of, 4-year degree plan. And, I had music theory and sight singing and choral conducting and all of the stuff. And I enjoyed all of it. But it was like, I took voice, I'm taking piano lessons, I'm singing in chorale. And when I got my course schedule and, okay, now you'll be taking music composition, it was like, okay, yes, this is what I've been waiting for.
I've waited this whole moment for this stuff right here.
And I understood even then that it's art, and they said from the beginning that we had a textbook, and rules are made to be broken. But there are some guidelines, some things to get you going. But it's art, so there's not really a right or wrong, which makes artists a little bit crazy sometimes, because you can't go step 1, 2, 3 every time, and here's your answer. It's not always 2 + 2 = 4. So sometimes it's a little bit maddening, but it was like, okay, I was sitting on go. So now this is going to get me going. I've been wanting to write, but I want to do it right
There's
from the
how.
get-go.
Yeah.
I know you've got to, there's trial and error. You have
Yeah.
to learn. And okay, I'm going to have some structure here. So, I mean, I came out with a vengeance. It's, you know, it's the, you know, and then my senior year, after they would group us together, you know, to work on song projects, and we want you to write this kind of song and all that. So those were my first co-writes. And then my senior year, the music director announced that we were going to do more or less, it wasn't a full-blown project, but just a simple praise and worship project with new material for churches to, you know, get new worship songs. And he announced it in choir practice that this is in the works here in the next few weeks. We'll be talking more about it, but I feel like some of you students have got some material that, you know, there's a few cover songs we're going to do, but I feel like some of you students have some things you could contribute. And I was determined that I would have something.
Like, this
and
is
so
my moment.
I wrote a chorus during choir practice. I don't, hopefully I learned what I was supposed to be learning that day, but I wrote a chorus and I went directly to the music office and I said, I just wrote this chorus. I was pretty certain it was usable, but you know, you're waiting on that affirmation.
Still hesitate,
And one of our instructors that was going to be involved with the project and all that, he's actually a phenomenal writer, Tim Pedigo. I don't know if you know that name, but had written for various groups at that time and toured with Davis Pedigo. He was kind of helping oversee, so he said, let's get Tim in here and see what he thinks and have him help work with you on it. And we added a bridge and all that. So that was the first song I wrote outside of class, and it went on a recording.
Wow.
so I felt like, okay, this is a good start. You know, maybe I got lucky the first time, but just for some of it too, it's that that affirmation. I think I can do this, but you need somebody that you
to come and
look up to say,
yes,
you can do this. You know.
Yeah, that's incredible. I love that. Yeah, that's awesome. The importance of having people that can look at it and say, pull the good out in you. You know what I mean? That can encourage you to say, yeah, keep going. Yeah, you've got a gift. Yeah, use it. So that's incredible. I love that. So right now we are currently during COVID-19, Corona, crazy stuff. And I know life has been rocky for a lot of the artists out there, a lot of the singers and stuff. It's been what no one could imagine. You know, no one would have ever imagined that this would take place. But what is keeping your faith grounded right now? That is keeping you encouraged, uplifted, and you know that this is going to pass. What's keeping that alive in you?
You know, it's been really interesting because I'm a what we call you hear the term a lot, type A personality, and so if my husband were here, he would be shouting amen. I'm a worrier, and that's fear is not of God. And I know that, but what you know in your head and what it's sometimes it's a work in progress, really living it out and living out your faith. So there are times, there have been less frightening situations I've gotten myself really worked up over, and it all worked out.
Yeah.
But at the beginning of this, I think when back in February, we were doing a music cruise with several other gospel artists, and it was mid-February, the day we're leaving, and there's all of this talk about this thing we feel has come out of China. And so as we were boarding that day, we all had to fill out some paperwork saying that it had been at least, I believe it was 15 days since if you had been to China, that it had been at least 15 days. And so there was one artist on the ship that made that by a day.
Wow. Wow.
But it was, I think we were a little bit flippant about it at that point. Like, you know, I think maybe this is overblown.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No one really knew anything at that point.
Right.
You know?
So mid-March, I guess it was, Jason and I were flying into Nashville for some meetings, and it was whatever the date was exactly, I don't remember, but it was right over the course of the couple of days we were getting ready to fly, and we had, my mom and I were speaking at a ladies' conference that weekend, and then we were singing 2 different churches on that Sunday, and every day, it was like every hour, things were like, what's happening? One of the ladies' conference was in Louisiana, and the Louisiana governor was one of the first to start limiting crowd sizes, and so they contacted us, and we're right, we're just gonna make it inside the
Yeah.
limit, so we're gonna go ahead and have the Friday night event, but we're gonna cancel the Saturday event. And so everything was changing so fast.
Exactly.
I didn't have time to worry about it. It was just
Exactly.
like, okay.
It just happened.
But so then Monday we're gonna be flying to Nashville, and we're checking, because then they're dropping the limit again for the meeting size, even more so. And so we're checking with touching base with people here. Are we still on? Is this still happening? And like I said, it was just so fast and furious. And Sunday night, packing, we get to bed late. We've just got back in from singing and all that. And sometimes I'm keyed up when I've been rushing around. Not sometimes, most of the time, if I haven't had a chance to wind down. And so my heart was pounding, not because I was worried about Corona. The only thought process even pertaining to Corona right then was, I hope we're not getting on this plane for nothing and we get there and we can't do what we were supposed to do, and we wasted a trip because they won't let us. Not so much concern about everything else, I guess. It was just, there was too much for my brain to absorb. But so my heart's pounding, and I'm thinking, but I've got to go to sleep. And my husband and I just had a conversation. Let's pray. If this is all supposed to proceed as planned, great. If it's not meant to happen, Lord, let them cancel our flight or something before we even board the plane. And so I'm thinking about all of that, and then going, I've got to go to sleep, but then that makes it worse.
Exactly.
So I've got to go to sleep. My heart's pounding, and I start. Sometimes when that will happen, am I supposed to be praying? Am I supposed to be writing? And so it was kind of a combination of the two. I started praying and realized these could be lines to a song, and so I fell asleep with about 4 lines. And the next morning in the airport getting coffee, I remembered, hey, maybe that could be something. And so this is, I don't know if I'm supposed to be doing an ad right here. We have a brand new single coming out. From that, that I was honored to write with Sonia Isaacs of the Isaacs. And so we were meeting to write, but ended up not writing what we had discussed writing. It was all of this happening and what just hit us. And it was a dreary, rainy day. And all of us artists had just had our tour schedules pretty much canceled indefinitely. And so it was like, okay, what just happened? But it was so, I don't know, I guess I've never had a peace like I had in that moment, because from that, like I said, that being really the first week of all of that, I believe that was the first week they were asking us to stay home if you didn't have to be out and do the social distancing and all that, was when all of that really started. And so we started working on this song, and it's called Faithful in These Times. And it's just basically sharing our hearts about what we're feeling right now. And from that, I was discussing with some artists by text the other day, something we meant to do and we haven't had a chance to do because we thought we were going to have all this free time, and somehow we've all been strangely busy with online content and doing all these things. And I think that's how God works sometimes. While there have been some tragic things happen, and I'm not making light of the situation at all. We know people that have been ill. We know of people that have died from the virus. We know of people that are affected financially because of all the shutdowns and all of that. So not making light of it, but at the same time, and we've been affected financially, but then in other ways we could have never anticipated, God has made up for it financially. And so it's just been one of those things sometimes when, I don't even remember who the artist was, but a few years ago there was a song, I Have No Other Choice But to Trust You. So
what else do you do exactly?
Now, can I say that I always react that way? No, I don't. Sometimes, like I said, I get really freaked out about stuff. And everything turns out fine, and I promise myself next time I'm not even going to worry, but I do. But through this, I've just really had a peace, and like I said, because of good things that have come out of it, I just know, and one of the lines in the song says that he's not taken by surprise. He didn't say, oh my goodness, COVID-19, I never saw that one coming. We didn't, but he works all things together for good. And so stuff that doesn't look good to me is not that he's this twisted, sinister God in any way, but our human perspective of good sometimes is not his perspective of good. And so he's working all of this together for good. And I'm seeing a lot of, look at how creative everybody has become.
Exactly.
And so many things it's pushed us to do. And even as far as outreach endeavors, just things that have happened and reports that we've gotten from people that otherwise have not darkened a church door,
Right.
but people are shaken, and
Exactly.
and a lot of people have put it off, but they know that the only answer is God, and
Yeah.
so it's driven our nation to its knees, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so I'm encouraged in that, and like I said, it's not over yet. There's times where, you know, in the back of my mind, whether it's my flesh or the enemy, will say, well, it's not over yet, you know, your schedule still isn't full yet.
Yeah.
You know, that's in the back of my mind, but also the lyrics to and maybe that was part of it, God speaking to Sonia and I that day, I'm faithful in these times.
Right.
And,
Right now.
and there's never
Exactly.
a time. Faithful is, there's no end to that. Faithful is faithful.
Yeah.
It's self-explanatory. There won't be a time that he's
Yeah.
not faithful. So
And
it's
when he
gonna work out.
closes one door, I mean, he's gonna open another one. It may not look how we think it's gonna look, you know,
Right.
and but man, that's so good. That's incredible. It really has. And what you said about driving, I think it's pushed the church outside of its four walls.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, think about how many people you reach on Facebook, social media, just by, and then now everyone's at home, you know, so the gospel's getting out to people like it's never has before, you know. And I even heard a story, you know how they used to do the tent revivals back in the day, right? Now we have sound systems, so people are hearing it where they could not hear it before. It's just crazy, and it's so easy. I am the same way. I'm a worrier. It's hard to say that word. Literally, I worry about everything. So I totally feel where you're coming from. But it's so easy to focus on the negative. It's so easy to focus on everything going wrong. But like you said, when we take it to what I know and then start to believe what we know in our heads, what you said is so powerful. When you take what you know and you believe it, then like it just changes. So that's incredible. Absolutely incredible. So the last question that I always like to end the interviews with is, take yourself back all the way when you first started. What advice would you have wanted then that you've lived through, you know, where you started and where you are now? You've lived through all of this. What advice would you want your younger self to know?
Oh, what I need to tell my younger self, I still tell my current self.
Okay.
And that's learning to trust your gut. And I've read interviews and articles with various people, even on the secular scene, and so you'll hear that term a lot, and they're not necessarily acknowledging God, you know, but to trust instinct, trust your gut, whatever. But if you do serve God, and again, ask Him to order your steps, trust your gut, your instinct, your heart, whatever, is usually something He's dropped into your spirit. And if you have the power of the Holy Ghost in you, that will quicken you. And so there's lots of things, and this doesn't have anything to do with anything spiritual. This is silly and just being a girl. I have learned the older that I've got, if we're planning for an event and I'm thinking about what I'm going to wear for that, it used to take me a week to decide, you know, what I was going to do. And I learned that, now if you ask my husband, it still takes me longer than it should to actually get ready. But as far as, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to wear? What shoes am I going to put with that? 9 times out of 10, I go back to the first thing that came into my mind for whatever reason. And that's not anything spiritual. That's just being silly. On the spiritual side, we can be, I still miss it. I'm human, and we can be wrong sometimes. But again, 9 times out of 10, if I have a gut feeling about an individual, if something doesn't sit right in my spirit, I'm not going to run them down to people. I'm not, well, you need to watch out for them or whatever. But there were times, as I was getting older in Bible college, or different times where you're learning leadership skills and just relationship and communication and interacting with people. I have a strong personality, and so there would be times where it wouldn't even necessarily be where I'd had a conflict with that person. Just observing them, something didn't sit well with me, and I think I need to pray through. I've got a bad attitude. You know, it's just me. It's my personality, and we just don't. And they may not even be aware that I'm watching you. You know, something that. And 9 times out of 10, about the time that I've decided it's just me and I need to get over myself, I've misjudged them. Because everybody else thinks they're awesome. Something would come to light, and like I said, you know, we're all at a different place in our walk with God, and I'm not judging or condemning anybody, but okay, there was this issue here, and that's why
That's
I felt
why,
that check
yeah.
in my spirit, and not, you know, like I said, over the course of time, there have been people that, you know, whatever that was for them and their walk with God or whatever, they've gotten past that or whatever, but
Yeah.
at that time, there definitely was something in, whether it's relationships, like I said, being silly about clothes, whatever, working on a song, something we have an idea for our ministry or whatever, a song arrangement. A lot of times I go back to that first
yeah.
thing that came into my mind, and so now I've learned to listen to that sooner. Like, okay, that wasn't for nothing.
Right.
I'm a procrastinator in some ways. I used to say that, and then I read something that made me feel a little better. They were talking about creative people a lot of times are viewed as that, but when they've done studies with different group people that are procrastinating, okay, I want you to sit down right now and start developing this plan for this project, and then with this other group, wait until this date or this point in time, and then put it together. That they saw as many or more results with the procrastinating group, because you're not really, if you don't, the assignment's there, it's in your head and you're going over it. And somebody asked me in an interview one time, do you sit down to write, or does the song sit you down? And I said, yeah, it's usually the latter. There's if I sit down with nothing, sometimes you're staring at a computer screen for a while.
Exactly.
If you don't have some kind of inspiration, if you're not in that flow. So usually it's some idea that, oh, I need to jot some notes down, and then later I'm sitting down to develop it. So you're already, you know, but there's that thing that there is that aha moment sometimes with something, and sometimes it's subtle because the Lord doesn't always shout.
Yeah.
But it's just that first thing that came to me, so I'm always going to circle back around and go, okay, I need to make sure. And like I said, there are occasions where, no, we're going to go a different direction, but most of the time it's that first instinct, that listen to it. And anyway, there's that. All my answers are long.
Yeah. Hey, I'm here for it. And that really, honestly, one of the things that I questioned many times is, how do you know that you're in the will of God, right? When you set out to do something, when you set out to start anything, how do you know that you're in the will of God? But what you said about usually when you feel with the Holy Ghost, usually that is, you can't really go outside of the will of God when you are walking with Him, you know? And so that's so powerful that for you, like going with that first thing was in tune with what He would want. I mean, that's so powerful. So that's incredible. And y'all are doing Facebook Lives.
We are.
I'm
very
loving them. They're
very
great.
Informal Facebook Lives.
Yes, but hey, that's what we're here for. We love it.
Like, people are watching for good comedy entertainment because they're stuck at home and they're bored, because every time we think we've got all the tech glitches worked out, no, there's another one.
Exactly. You can get everything straightened out and then like boom, no.
And what's crazy is, like we set up every week on a normal in normal life, not COVID-19 life. We're setting up every week, several times a week, doing events. Yes, occasionally there's an audio glitch or whatever, but nothing like this. And I think by the time this setup is over, we might have it figured out.
Exactly. Hey, but they're awesome. So tell them where they can find your music. Once y'all can start touring again, where the tour dates will be. And then your Facebook page is where they can catch all the Facebook Lives. They're incredible. Y'all need to go watch them. But tell them where they can find all that good stuff.
You can find us at thewilbanksmusic.com. There's, if you like hard copies, you can order CDs. If you like digital, you can download the music there, or you can go directly to iTunes and download. We're on a lot of the streaming platforms. You can find a lot of videos on Facebook, on YouTube. Just type in the Wilbanks, and there's the Wilbanks official page on both Facebook and YouTube, all of that. Yeah, it's all there. Like I said, digital or hard copies, whatever you like.
They've got it all.
Yeah, we have actual concept videos on Facebook and YouTube.
They're incredible.
And then a whole lot of, if you're just bored and want to see all of our tech glitches, we laugh at ourselves. And there's a lot of informal Facebook Live stuff too.
Yes, incredible. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank
It's been
you.
an honor.
Great.
Incredible. And I know they're going to love it out there. So thank you so much.
Thank you.